This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's Subway to Shea's series preview. Division rivals, Mets, Braves, 4-game series coming up. A lot to talk about. We're going to recap what happened in the Red series this past weekend. There's a little bit of news to talk about as well. So strap in, get ready. We're talking about it all today on this show. A little live before the Braves series gets set. Shout out to the 20 people who are already on the show. Duran Rivera in here. Carlos Ortiz. What's up, my friend? How are you doing? Good to see all of you guys in here. Appreciate you all. And let's get right into it because the Mets had a pretty busy weekend against the Cincinnati Reds. And finally have taken a series, their first series win of the season. And very happy that they were able to do this. Let's kind of quickly recap what happened this past weekend. And if there's anything that you guys want to discuss, throw it into the comments, throw it into the chat because I want to get into it. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you're following Subway to Shea. Going solo today. Usually I have a kind of guest co-host for the series, but doing this solo today. And let's get into the recap, which I have for you right here. Mets win their first series of the season against Cincinnati. They take 2 out of the 3. Solid starting pitching from Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, and Sean Manaea. We got to see how well that they pitched. Jose Quintana, 5 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. He only gave up 1 home run in that game. Luis Severino was better this time around than he was in his initial game at Citi Field against Milwaukee. 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. So it was nice to see that as well. And I mentioned Sean Manaea, who's been the best pitcher so far for the New York Mets. 5 innings, I only gave 5 hits. 5 innings, only gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. Jeff McNeil had the game-winning home run in the eighth inning of the first game of that series. Nice to see him get at bat. He did struggle for the rest of the series, so take with that what you will. Brandon Nimmo, who missed the first game after a little injury and a need for a day off. He returned in game 2, had 2 hits, 2 RBIs, so it was nice to see him get back off the snide. Omar Narvaez, in game 2, he had 3 hits, but that game kind of got ruined because of bad defense behind the plate. Undid Yohan Ramirez out of the bullpen, and we'll get into him because some news just came out today on Yohan Ramirez. Brett Baty, man, what more can we say about Brett Baty? He continues to impress on offense, on defense. He had 5 hits in this series. He had an RBI and now has a batting average of .290, so that's great to see. Him playing well, and we just want to continue to see the kids play well. Francisco Lindor, everyone, finally broke out on Sunday. 2 hits, a double, and a home run. A lot of stuff going on around Francisco Lindor, and mostly of what's going on with some of the fan base on social media, which I'll probably get. I got into actually more on the podcast that I did this past week or last week with Mike Silva of the Talking Mets podcast. But it's nice to see Francisco Lindor. He's got my full support. I know he's got a lot of your full support as well. And great to see him get there. And how about Edwin Diaz? He finally earned his first 2 saves of the season because every time they would bring him in, they'd be, down a couple runs. So he earns his first 2 saves of the season. That save on Sunday, pretty freaking dominant, right? I mean, 2 strikeouts. He played very well. And trying to look at some other things here to see if I, if I missed anything. And if I did miss anything, please let me know. Well, we talked about how good the starting pitching was. And, my problem is the fact that they're not giving us length, right? I know we got 5 2/3 innings pitched from Jose Quintana, but only getting 5 innings from Luis Severino, only getting 5 innings from Sean Manaea. Okay for right now, but as the season goes on, we are going to need to see a little bit more from our starting pitching so that the bullpen doesn't get exhausted, because there were a lot of guys that weren't available, especially on Saturday when, Johan Ramirez was stuck out there and had no help to get out of that inning, and especially Omar Narvaez, who had the double steal mistake. He looked like a deer in the headlights when they were talking to him during the press conference. So I'm a little concerned about him behind the backstop, and he had a couple other mental gaffes, but yeah, they kind of left Johan Ramirez out to dry, and now he's been designated for assignment. This season, he was 0-1, 11.81 ERA, and 6 Ks and 5.1 innings pitched. But he'll be replaced by Cole Sussler this series, who in his career is 7-13, got a 3.87 ERA, 15 saves, and 143 strikeouts in 132 and 2/3 innings pitched. So Johan Ramirez is out. My big concern, and I talked about this all weekend with the Mets, when it comes to bullpen management, I need to see a little bit more from Jeremy Hefner. I know that the team has the best ERA in the National League, pitching wise. I know that, the bullpen has been pretty solid, but in these games that they have lost, and some of the games that they have won but had to go through the bullpen and a lot of pitching, something that concerns me, and I saw this the 2 games that I went to, the first 2 games of the season, which I was at against Milwaukee, is the fact that anytime these pitchers, whether it's the starter or the reliever, anytime they get into a little bit of trouble, I need to see Jeremy Hefner go out there and calm them down. When he doesn't come out, this inning begins to unravel. And he did this last season too, where he would come out after the inning has already unraveled. And that's something I need to see stop here. He does not have Max Scherzer shooing him away or Justin Verlander shooing him away. He doesn't have, Jacob deGrom telling him to stay in the dugout. These pitchers, they're on their last leg. If they don't pitch well this season, some of them could be out of the league. So I need Jeremy Hefner to play damage control here and at least give these guys a break for a hot second, because we all know there's the pitch clock and there's not enough time to gather yourself. So if Jeremy Hefner, I don't know how many mound visits, I think there's either, I don't know if there's 3 or 5 mound visits yet. Use them. He did on Sunday. He used them on Sunday, and guess what? It worked. He came to check on Sean Manaea when Sean Manaea had the bases loaded. Before he could give up any runs, he comes, he checks on him. They get into inning double play. That's what I need to see more of. So I hope that we see more of this, especially in this series that's coming up, because I assume that this bullpen is going to be taxed by Thursday. Against this Atlanta Braves team, with this offense, a little bit of concern going into this series. But when I was talking in the Reds series preview with my good friend Keith of Shea and Sons, shout out to them, we both said that at the very least, this team has to get out of Cincinnati with 2 wins and a series win. Because if they did not do that, I would be very concerned going into this Brave series. I do have a little, like I always say, cautious optimism going into this series. The Mets definitely need to take two of these games, at least. And we're going to go through the pitching matchups and some of the, I guess, matchups within the game to watch between the pitchers and the batters. But yeah, this team could really come away in a good spot if they can split this series with Atlanta. And you know how you start that off? Win tonight. Win tonight's game, get it started, and let's get this team, back in the right spot. We saw Francisco Lindor hit a little bit on Sunday. Good sight to see. And now hopefully we can start getting some of these guys hitting on all cylinders. McNeil still needs to get out of this funk, even though he hit a home run on Friday. There is a matchup I like that I'm going to talk about with McNeil. And, we get what we get from Pete. Hopefully he's a little better in this series than he was in the last. I like what I saw from Tyrone Taylor. Francisco Alvarez is, that's my guy right now. I love Francisco Alvarez. And Brandon Nimmo seems to be getting out of his funk as well. As Starling Marte also had a nice series. But this series has pretty much been led by how well Brett Beatty hit and how well he played defense. So I really liked what I saw from Brett Beatty, and I hope that confidence continues to build and build and build and get better for him. Because I kind of did a little comparison for him, and his comp to me is Alec Bohm, who's having a pretty decent career right now in Philly after turning everything around. So hopefully the same thing can happen for Brett Beatty. That's what we like to see. My guy Ibby in the house. Great to see you, my friend. Till Mets Do Us Part podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to them on YouTube as well. They'll be on the show here more often. They were on with me the first series preview, but we'll have them on again. It's always great having Ibby in the house. Shout out to Danny Matos, who's here as well. On opening day, he brought his Brett Beatty jersey. Try saying that 25,000 times. So I'm right there with you, Danny. I'm hoping nothing but, good success for Brett Beatty. We talked about how well he played this series. Let's see that carry over into Atlanta. As you remember, he came up his first series in 2022 was against Atlanta, and his first at bat was that home run. So hopefully we can see him play well this series as well. Maybe make Atlanta his home away from home. 62 people up in here already, just to hear me talk by myself. It's amazing. I'm always amazed by this. I can't thank you guys enough. This is awesome. And I hope all of you guys enjoyed this past weekend's games. If you guys like wrestling, I hope you guys saw WrestleMania. That was fun as well. We got the eclipse happening outside. So much is going on today and this week. We got Sunday coming up. And we'll get into this in the Kansas City series preview, but we got Doc's number retirement. So that's going to be great. Hope to see you guys out there on Sunday. But yeah, man, the Mets. There you go, Shea. I told you, Shea. I had to represent, man. I had to represent with WrestleMania. This is old school. Got Ultimate Warrior on here. Got Randy Savage on here. Got the Heart Foundation on this shirt. Piper. But the Mets, like I said, they really need to come away with 2 games when it comes to this series. And, Zoran Rivera saying, I don't know why DJ Stewart is taking up a roster spot. Honestly, Zoran, I don't know why either. I mean, at this point, I honestly rather have Tyrone Taylor. And if you're not going to make any roster moves, I'd rather have Tyrone Taylor play in right field and let Starling Marte DH. Since DJ Stewart is pretty much not giving us anything. And if they're not going to bring up Vientos, if we're going to have to wait for JD Martinez, who doesn't seem to be ready yet. And I said I thought that he was going to come back during the Kansas City series at home. I'm not too sure about that, if his back is hurting him or not. He doesn't seem to be ready. He was shut down for a couple of days. So I don't know if it's an injury or if it's just him trying to get used to playing again because, he missed basically the entire spring. So we'll see what happens with JD Martinez. Shea Parking Lot mentioning the purple jerseys. We'll get into that as well. Let's get into that now because the Mets announced today. We'll get into the series preview, but the Mets announced today, a little teaser. They give us a little tease that on the 19th, I think it is, which I think is 2 Fridays from now, if I'm for certain. I got to check my calendar and double check that and make sure. When's the 19th? April 19th. Not this Friday, next Friday, they will be unleashing or revealing the City Connect jerseys. So they had a little teaser that I think it was the Queensboro Bridge that they showed. And they had the Mets logo in orange, which then, with the graphics, switched to purple. And I think that that just is reminiscent of the 7 line, right? The 7 line train. And maybe they're honoring this Subway to Shea podcast too, right? Using the subway to Shea, going to Subway to Citi Field. I don't know how this jersey is going to come out. My guy Ibby here seems to think it's going to be all purple, like Grimace. I already told him I think it's going to be more like the San Francisco Giants City Connect jerseys. We already have a black jersey. I don't think there's a need for another one. I think it's going to be a snow white jersey with some kind of purple, coloring in there as well. And then maybe the hat is purple with the NY being white, as in that little 7 logo. So we'll see what comes out of this jersey. I'm kind of excited. I love purple. That's my favorite color. So I'm probably going to buy one anyway. But when you look at the City Connect jerseys of the past, there's some good ones, some not so good ones, some terrible ones. But I hope that the Mets ones are at least decent. And I don't think it's going to say Mets on it. I think it's going to say either New York or Queens. That's how I'm taking it. I think it's going to say New York or Queens on it, and I would love that New York script to return if they could do something with that. That would be sweet because that's one of my favorites. Danny Matos saying Shea used to look purple to him. Yeah, as a kid, of course. I definitely got that before. So, excuse me as I go through the comments too. When I'm doing this solo, going through the comments is a lot for me. I'm sure Ibby knows that. Hey, let's see what Ibby. If they go snow white, purple accent, queens across the chest, could look sharp. Let's hope for the best. Yeah, man, that's what I'm hoping for. But you know that there's always going to be fans that are either going to love it, they're going to hate it. We're never going to 100% fully satisfy the Mets fan base ever. So we'll see what happens with the jerseys. I do like them. I do like what I've heard so far or seen with that little teaser. It's crazy that we have not seen any leaks for this. I mean, the Philly ones, which I don't like. I like the Philly hats, but I don't like the jerseys. Those released about, I think, 2 months ago. They were at least dropped 2 months ago. So we'll see with that. This fan base, most difficult for sure. Carlos Ortiz bringing up Jerry Grody. He passed away this past weekend at 81 years old. 12 years with the Mets. Batted .256, 35 home runs, 357 RBIs, 69 World Series champion with the Miracle Mets. The You Gotta Believe 1973 National League champion Mets as well. It's kind of hard to figure out where he ranks when it comes to Mets catchers, right? Because, anytime you think of Mets catchers, the first 2 names that come to your mind are Mike Piazza and Gary Carter. So I would think Jerry Grody would go right in there afterwards. He would have to. I mean, World Series champion, been to 2 World Series. I think you would have to put him third on that list. I'm pretty sure some people have him higher, and that's fine. But rest in peace to Jerry Grody. We've lost a lot of the 69 guys recently. Bud Harrelson, I think Jim McAndrew, another one as well. This Mets, the Mets get made fun of a lot on social media. LOL Mets, LOL this, and, whatever. But this team, although having only 2 world championships, has a rich history. And Jerry Grody is 100% a part of that. Bud Harrelson, also 100% part of that. And I wish that they would honor these guys in a little better way instead of, doing what they did with the Hall of Fame and moving it now all the way to the back of where the Fan Fest area is in a little small room, because they made the existing Hall of Fame is now the huge Met store. They extended the team store and made the Hall of Fame smaller. But I hope at some point that maybe that's just a footmark and maybe they put the Hall of Fame someplace better. That would be nice to see. We'll see moving forward how they handle that situation. But right now it looks like they don't have like everything out there from the Hall of Fame, but they do have, the strawberry stuff and the Gooden stuff because, they're, getting their numbers retired. So it's kind of like they're highlighting them. They're highlighting the Shea Stadium because I think it's the, what is it now? The 40th anniversary. I don't know if it's the 60th anniversary of Shea Stadium. It's one of them, but there is an anniversary for Shea Stadium, and they have a lot of the stuff out there as well. Let's get into this series preview here. And we got 79 people in the room. Make sure you like this video, please. Sends a lot more people here if you do that. Make sure you're subscribing to Subway to Shea. Brings more people here as well. Yuki Matsui in the house. What's going on, my friend? How you doing? Great to have you in here. Lane Kerner saying, can we beat up on the Braves in 4 games? Well, Lane, we're going to get right into that right now. Let's look at the pitching matchups for this series. The pitching probables. Julio Teheran making his season debut. He was signed this past week. He'll make his debut for the Mets and face his old team. Charlie Morton, who gives us a lot of fits. He'll be taking on Charlie Morton. And Charlie Morton is 5-3 against the Mets since his tenure here with the Braves. Second game of the series, Adrian Hauser, who comes off a really good game, but it was a short outing. I don't know why he came out after 67 pitches, but he's going to be taking on Reynaldo Lopez, who's got a 1.50 ERA after his initial start. Jose Quintana going in game 3 against a to be determined. We do not know who's pitching game 3 yet, but we do know who's pitching game 4 for the Braves, and that's Max Fried, who got off to a rough start in his first outing. He's going to be taking on Luis Severino, who pitched very well in his second start for the New York Mets. Go back to the first game. The most success that any of the Mets have against Charlie Morton is Joey Wendell. And I think I saw Joey Wendell in the lineup tonight. He's got a 375 batting average and an 850 OPS in 16 plate appearances against Charlie Morton. So keep your eye out on that little battle there. The Mets have, hit some home runs off of Morton as well. Francisco Alvarez, Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil has 2. Omar Narvaez has home run as well. So we are going to see if the Mets, they're not having great at-bats against Morton, but they do have a little bit of power. So we're going to see if they can change that narrative and hit a little better against Morton, but he always gives the Mets fits. And I look at some of the other matchups here, and mostly in game 1, you're looking at Julio Teheran, and Marcell Ozuna is going to be talked about a lot during this series. 358 batting average, 1.024 OPS, 4 home runs, and 11 RBIs versus Teheran in 53 at-bats. That's a big enough sample size I need to see to know that he could possibly struggle against Marcell Ozuna. So that's something that I'm going to be, really watching out for as this game tonight takes place. You want to look at the Joey Wendell versus Charlie Morton, and I know Joey Wendell hasn't gotten off to a great start. Probably won't be getting as many starts, but when you hit as well as you do against Charlie Morton, and you need this offense to get a little, a little action against him, we're going to see Joey Wendell and see if he can, spark anything at the bottom of the lineup. But Marcell Ozuna is going to be concerned against Julio Teheran. Ibby saying he thinks that Bryce Elder is going to go in game 3. Possible, but they haven't said it just yet. So we'll see. I'm pretty sure he will be the guy since he was a big part of that team last time around or last season. We look at game 2 and the player matchups to watch there. I mean, like every Braves hitter has just been amazing to start this season, right? How many comebacks that they're having. But I look to see at how many at bats some of these players have against the Mets. And Austin Riley against Adrian Hauser, only 14 at bats, but's got a 429 batting average, 1.072 OPS, 1 home run, and 6 RBIs is something that I'm definitely going to be intrigued about in game 2. So be on the lookout for Austin Riley. Every single batter is a concern here. And it's funny, out of all of these that I've written down, none of them have maybe the best player in baseball to a lot of people, Ronald Acuna Jr. You go to game 3, and this is the biggest concern that I have going into game 3. Everyone on this Braves offense hits Jose Quintana very well. And it's a very big concern for me. Danny Mato saying very worried. Yes, this game right here, game 3, Quintana against, I guess, Bryce Elder or whoever it is to be determined still. This is the game that concerns me, and here is why. Ozzy Albies, in 10 at-bats against Quintana, has got 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, a 600 batting average, 2.036 OPS. That's one. Here's another one. Adam Duvall, 8 at-bats, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs as well, 375 batting average, 1.768 OPS against Jose Quintana. And we've seen Quintana more liable to give up home runs this season. The Braves are going to test him. I mentioned Marcell Ozuna. Well, guess what? He's back. Marcell Ozuna, 455 batting average, 1.182 OPS, 1 home run, 7 RBIs against Quintana in 22 at-bats. A big enough sample size to be concerned about Jose Quintana in game 3 against the Atlanta Braves. If he gives us 5 solid innings, I will be ecstatic if he gets us through 5. But that is a game that if any of those stats come to fruition, and that's only 3 of them, if any of those stats come to fruition, we might see a bullpen game. And that's something I don't want to see a lot of in this 4-game series. Now we go to game 4, and he's saying, Anthony, why are you just posting these matchups between the Braves hitters and not any of the Mets ones? Well, I'm going to get into some Mets ones because the concerns I have about Quintana against the Atlanta Braves, I have for Max Fried against the New York Mets. Pete Alonso has a 294 batting average, 885 OPS, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs against Max Fried in 34 at-bats. That's a good enough sample size, right? That's a game 4 of the Mets and Braves on Thursday is a game that I think favors the Mets more. And that's even with Luis Severino on the mound. Max Fried has somewhat struggled against the Mets. You look at Jeff McNeil. If Jeff McNeil wants to have a great game, throw him in on this one. 28 at-bats, 357 batting average, 831 OPS, and 4 RBIs versus Max Fried. So that is definitely the matchup. To me, game 4 favors the Mets the most. So if they could come out with a win in that final game of the series and take one of these first 2 games, 2 out of 4, I'll take it. But I am highly concerned about game 3 with Quintana, considering that the Atlanta Braves have batted him around for, most of his career. Well, what I want to know from you guys, you let me know what you're looking forward to in these games, coming up. Matt Ibby, I've been saying Joey Wendell ready to power this offense, especially in this game. If we could get a little bit of offense from Joey Wendell in game 1, I'll take it. Just like Danny Manto says, I'll take it. Get us this first win tonight, and I can breathe a little bit easier. Get 2 in a row, get us to 4-6, and then I'm feeling good about things. I'd like to see what the kids can do in this series, what we're going to get from Brett Beatty, what we're going to get from Francisco Alvarez. If they can provide a spark that is needed, because the pitching is pitched very well. Starters, bullpen. But now we are on the third turnaround. Once we get to the third and fourth game of the series, we are now starting the third turnaround of this rotation. And I'm going to need to see 6 innings pitched. Like I talked about Quintana being the biggest concern. I got to see 6 innings from Quintana. I got to see 6 innings from Luis Severino. It's crazy that I'm asking for 6 innings only in this day and age of baseball. But here we are. Rosie K says, I wonder how much Atlanta crushing the Mets the past few years will impact this team. I don't think they have ever recovered from 2022. Rosie, I've said this once, I've said this 1,000 times, and I 100% agree with you. I think that there is something missing from this team, and it was taken away from the Mets that series in 2022 where they gut punched them. And then the Mets went on to the wild card series and got an uppercut from the Padres, and they have not been the same since. So the Mets are going to have to overcome these demons. Like the Braves, every decade, the Braves since the beginning of the 90s, the Braves have been haunting the Mets. And every so often, the Mets will get one, right? 2015, 2006, the Mets absolutely dominated the Braves. They struggled against them in 99 and 2000, and they didn't have to face them in the 2000 NLCS and got to the World Series. But man, the Mets have to get over these demons. They really do. I don't know if it happens this series because I have not been impressed with the coaching of Carlos Mendoza. I have not been impressed, as great as the Mets ERA has been. I have not been impressed with Jeremy Hefner, and I talked about that at the beginning of the show. But man, if the Mets can overcome their demons against this Braves team at some point, I think it'll really turn into a solid season. Shea Parking Lot says he's looking forward to not facing Strider, and that's because Strider is probably going to be having Tommy John surgery. I think he has a UCL tear. I mean, all these pitchers are getting hurt. It's getting ridiculous. And I think Justin Verlander talked about it today in some publication or some interview, just how these even from all the way down to being a little kid to now about pitching and how they're, making more velocity and making this be more about velocity. And these guys are getting hurt. It's funny. They want this max effort velocity type pitchers, and they're going to pay them all this money, but those guys are getting hurt and they're not being valued for that dollar anymore. At some point, baseball's going to have to come back down to earth and stop with this kind of stuff. Duran Rivera says, I'd be elated if the Mets split, but they have to take at least one. Look, one game at a time, one pitch at a time, one strike at a time, one at bat at a time, one inning at a time, one game at a time. Let's get tonight. Let's take care of business tonight. Let's get a nice start from Julio Teheran. Let's not forget, Julio Teheran had a great start to last season with the Milwaukee Brewers. I think he had a 1.80 ERA until he fell apart in the second half. So hopefully you see more of that first half of Tehran this year as well. Ebby saying Braves hitting has been top shelf in baseball so far. Our pitching has held up and is at the top as well. Can this group stifle these bats enough for our offense to do enough? Offense is big here. Yeah. And you know what is funny too? Last year, the Mets had a really good offensive series against the Braves. I think didn't they like lose a game like 12-11? Like they led so many times, but the offense was too strong. And because the Mets had terrible pitching, they weren't able to overcome the Braves and they got swept. I think Francisco Alvarez had like 2 home runs. I think Pete had home runs. It was crazy. Now we got a little bit better pitching, but we're going to have to start seeing some innings from these guys. And I don't want to see if Adrian Hauser has 67 pitches into the 6th inning that you take him out because you don't know if he can go through the 3rd time in the order. Can we at least try? Can we at least see if he can? Can we allow our pitchers and our team to get through a little bit of adversity? That's something I would like to see. Instead of taking them out, how about you go and check up on them when there's a little bit of adversity? Calm them down. Take a little bit of break from the pitch clock. And they're especially going to need length because this is a 4-game series. There's no breaks this week. They go right into the Kansas City series at home. So they're going from Cincinnati to Atlanta, coming back home. It's a lot of days of playing games, man. And there's going to be days where certain pitchers are not available. We're not going to see Edwin Diaz out every game to close out a game. Maybe we'll see Cole Sussler since he has, what was it that I had here? He's got 15 saves. Maybe we'll see a Cole Sussler come out for a save. Shea Parking Lot saying he hasn't recovered from 2022. Yeah, I don't think any of us have. The Mets haven't. The Mets haven't. Of course, we're not. Rosie K saying it's something mental. I totally agree. I totally think that they are in the Mets' heads. And, you know, the Mets kind of ran roughshod over the league in 2022 from beginning to end. And then with that little adversity in September, they weren't really able to overcome that. And the Braves series kind of just crushed their spirits for good, where they had nothing left for San Diego in the wild card series. Every decade we go through this. Every decade. But hopefully that stops. And hopefully it's this year. I know they're only 3-6 right now, but I still have faith that this team can turn it around. I have never given up on Francisco Lindor, so I don't even care about. Like him getting off to this awful start, I think he's going to be fine. The velocity and Ron Rivera saying the velocity and the pitch clock is causing a lot of pitching injuries. A lot of the pitchers are saying it's not the pitch clock, it's the velocity and how hard they have to throw. Look at some of the pitchers of the past. I think this was brought up to me from my friend Danny Torres, who hosts the Talking 21 podcasts about Roberto Clemente. Guys like Jamie Moyer, you know, some of those soft tossers, Tom Glavine, they're not those pitchers. You don't see many of those type of pitchers anymore. Everything is max effort, high velocity type pitching. So I don't know if it's really the pitch clock, but I do think for sure it is the velocity. Ibby's saying my fear here is giving up a 3-run home run and losing 3-1. That's going to be the fear going into every game, unfortunately. It really is. And especially to a team that kind of bludgeons their pitching, other pitchers to death like the Braves do. I mean, they have home run hitters everywhere. Acuna, Riley, Olson, Travis d'Arnaud likes to run roughshod all over the Mets for giving up on him. Who else was it? Sean Murphy. Is he still on the team? I think Sean Murphy's still on the team. Trying to think of who else. Ozzy Albies, Michael Harris. I mean, they have it's like a star-studded lineup, kind of comparable to the Dodgers if you think about it. Looking at some of this chat, we got 95 people in the room. Thank you so much for tuning in for this series preview. I appreciate you. We're going to be doing this for every series. Every series this season, we're going to be doing these series preview. The next one will be, I think, Thursday night. I'll be doing one with Kansas City, and my guest will be Jeff Cohen of Baseball and Barbecue. So tune into that as we preview the Kansas City series this weekend and the whole, retiring of Doc Gooden's number. So we'll get into a little bit of that as well. Danny Mantos says, let's forget all the horrible history against these Braves. I can't take it. Hey, man, I try to forget every time. And then every season, they just remind us just a little bit that that they still run roughshod over the Mets. Yeah, Duran Rivera saying they hit Strider last year, but Braves offense bailed him out. Yeah, I think the Mets have pretty much handled Strider pretty well, I think, throughout his career. Now they won't have to deal with him at all because Strider's done for the season. So that's one less, I guess, pitcher to worry about. I don't wish ill will on Strider. I think he's one of the best pitchers, in the league. I pick him in my Yahoo leagues in fantasy baseball. He's a guy you definitely pick up. It sucks that all these pitchers are getting hurt, including him. I think Shane Bieber, another one who's got to have Tommy John surgery. And I'm not too 100% sure about Garrett Cole either. I don't think he's going to play this season. I'd be shocked if it's something not worse. And if he comes back to play, gets hurt, and then is out for another full season, it's going to be a bad job by the Yankees. Shea Parking Lot saying, hopefully Mendoza is studying his baseball situations manual. Yeah, I sure hope so. There's been some interesting moves by Mendoza, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because this is his first season. If you remember, 2005 did not start off well for Willie Randolph either. He started off 0-5 as well, and then they finally won a game. So let's pump the brakes on Mendoza. And let's see if he can kind of turn this around because he's not going anywhere, right? At the very least, and I think Eddie Presti posted this, like, will he make it through his 3-year contract? And Eddie Presti hosts or co-hosts, along with Al Cintron, the Mets Evening Brew with me on Morning Brew Sports Network. You can check that out every Thursday at 9 or following the games if there's games on Thursdays. But Eddie posted if Carlos Mendoza is going to make it through an entire season, or make it not through the entire season, if he's going to make it through the entire 3-year contract. And I'm giving him a full season. And then we'll see what happens into the next half of season 2 to see where we're at. It could be worse. It could be bringing up the wrong lineup like Mickey Callaway did. I mean, to me, Mickey Callaway is one of the worst managers, probably the worst manager the Mets have ever had. Look at other guys. Luis Rojas was just not ready yet and thrown into such a bad situation. Art Howe, terrible manager. Still to this day, my favorite manager is Bobby Valentine. And I know, why not Davey Johnson? Why not Gil Hodges? I didn't get to see those guys. I got Bobby. I got Art Howe. Got Terry Collins. Willie Randolph. So my pickings is slim. Got just over 100 people watching this right now. Appreciate every one of you. Like I said, please like the video. Sends more people in. If you're coming in halfway, you can check this out later as well. This is going to be up throughout the entire series, so you can come back for every game and look at what we've been talking about. Look up the matchups that we were talking about. Let's look at some more of these comments here. Carlos Ortiz saying Greg Maddux became a great pitcher, pitching 5 full outside the plate. Yeah, that you know what? That was a totally different time too. Like the strike zone was totally different. Do you remember how great Tom Glavine was painting the outside corner? And then he signs with the Mets. They changed the strike zone. I think that same season. He was never the same pitcher. He had to actually relearn and became a good pitcher towards the end of his Mets tenure. But he was never the same guy again. Never the same guy again. Matt Ibby. Oh my goodness. Matt Ibby bringing up Jerry Manuel. How could I forget Jerry Manuel? Man, that was some of those dark ages, man. That beginning of Citi Field, dark ages of baseball. My belief in the Mets was kind of zilch at that point. The last time I ever fully believed was 2006. And it hasn't been the same since. My guy Jingle Man is in the house. Every week every game coming up with a great song. You love to see it. And I will repost those songs. Him and Jordan Simpson, who actually I met Jordan at the game against Milwaukee. I got to see my guy Jingle Man out there at Citi Field at some point. I'll be there Sunday. If you're there Sunday, hit me up. Patty's in here, late to the party. You're never late, Patty. It's always great having you in here and talking with you. But as we start to wrap this up, this is a huge, huge series for the New York Mets. I know it's early, but you like to see them start to gain some momentum here. You'd like to see the offense start to click a little bit. As I think it's Mike Silva from Talking Mets says, this is kind of the getting to know you phase of this team, and it really is. And the Mets have wasted no time in getting rid of pieces they feel are not fitting. And DJ Stewart's probably next on that list. But Michael Tonkin, who I kind of think got wrongly let go. I mean, he's the guy right now. Michael Tonkin should be the guy that's eating these type of innings. He's the long man. And he got brought into situations where he probably should not have been in. Didn't help that Joey Wendell played bad defense in one of those games. But we could be using Michael Tonkin right now in times where, we would have to use Johan Ramirez for two, and another guy that was not used in the proper situation. But, we move on, and David Stearns ain't wasting no time on players if they're not pitching well. Shea Parking Lot says, we need to play like that inning yesterday with the bunts and hits, gritty small baseball. And I love gritty small baseball. The only problem with that is the Mets were not able to capitalize off of that, right? Like they got the couple bunt hits, and then I think Nimmo got hit in the back and that scored one run, but that was it. They didn't get the big hit, and that's what they need. All the bunting and those little tiny dink and dunk hits and moving the guy over. I love that type of baseball. But when your offense is not coming up with the big hit, in the big RBI situation, dang, man, it makes it a lot harder to do those things. But I saw them trying to create some runs. I saw them trying to do something, which is great to see, because besides that, they're going after first pitch swinging. I mean, Jeff McNeil does it all the time. You have DJ Stewart swinging at 3-0 pitches. So this actually is the perfect series to try to create some runs. But if you do this and you only score a run or two, kind of in fluky ways, like getting hit in the back or an error, and then the Braves are coming up to bat and they're bashing home runs all over the joint, becomes a concern and harder to come back. Duran Rivera saying, if Mets would have had wild card in the 80s, they probably would have been in playoffs most of that period. Abso-friggin-lutely. They probably would have been in the playoffs from 84 to about 90. And they may have a dynasty at that point. But They don't. And they didn't. I mean, this franchise has has suffered through some excruciating errors of baseball. Talk about 2020 when it was the easiest to make the playoffs and only 4 teams didn't make it. Of course, the Mets had to be one of the 4 teams that didn't make it. You got 3 wild cards now, and the Mets are struggling to make that final wild card. They got to get to a point where they're sustaining success, and every year is somewhat of a playoff year. And they keep talking about let's be the East Coast Dodgers. Man, I want to be, like the Astros and the Braves every year making the playoffs. Dodgers is all great and everything, and obviously we have the money and they have the money, but the Dodgers only have the 2020 World Series, which was a shortened season. Patty saying, DJ, yes, please. I'm not sure about Tonkin. What about Diekman? I think Diekman's fine. I don't think he's going anywhere. I know he had a rough game on Saturday where he gave up the 2 runs after quickly getting 2 outs, mind you. But this is what I'm talking about, right? So Diekman quickly gets 2 outs, and then there's a little adversity there. But does Jeremy Hefner come out? No. And then 2 runs come in to score. Gotta calm the situation down, and I don't feel like he does it enough. Yeah, Rosie K, you're right. The Mets are still having problems scoring runs. Talked about it with the comment the Shea parking lot made. They're getting the guys on base. They're not executing afterwards is the problem. And it's coming with big at-bats from guys like Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, who swings at the first pitch every time. Pete Alonso. It's not like Joey Wendell's coming up with the bases loaded. Or, Francisco Alvarez, who, whenever has gotten the opportunity, has gotten a big hit. So we need to see more of of these guys getting some better at bats. If a pitcher is struggling, giving up a couple of walks, why is a guy like DJ Stewart, who has a 3-0 count, swinging away? At some point, doesn't the coaching have to come into play with something like this? Don't swing. I don't know. I'm not a coach, but I feel like I feel like with the Mets, and you tell me guys this, there are some easy fixes for this team if the coaches just execute them. Patty saying singles and doubles are great, except they load the bases and leave the guys on base, just like as we talked about. Love getting guys on base. Love scoring a lot more. And I hope the Mets do that. Ivy, WrestleMania 41, Ant Rivera versus Jeremy Hefner, mound visit on a pole match. Yep, absolutely. I am ready for that. I'm ready to finish that story. That's a story I'm ready to finish. And that story being finished does not come out good for Jeremy Hefner. That's for sure. Shea parking lot saying you need more opportunities to drive in runs. Absolutely. No, I agree. Shea, I'm not disagreeing with you about these guys getting on base. You always need opportunities to score. And at some point, the run the run producers are going to have to step up to the plate and score these runs. Gonna need a big hit from Pete, who's already given us one, right? Everyone keeps saying, well, not everyone. Let me rephrase that. A lot of people have said on Twitter, and this was during that doubleheader game, Pete is not clutch. Not true at all. How many games has either Pete tied or given us the lead in? How many times in extra innings has Pete come up big? I think more times than David Wright's career. I think Pete is more of a clutch hitter. And I love David Wright. But I think he's more of a clutch hitter than David Wright. It just says period here. But Mets taking 2 games this series. I will take that 100%. Give me 2 games. Give me 2 games from this series. Last series against the Reds, I wanted to win that series. We won that series. This time, I will take a split in a heartbeat. I will run out of Atlanta with a split of that series. Hightail out of there, just taking those 2 games. But they got to do it. They have to do it. I'll bring up the pitching matchups again. Let's see what we got here. Oh, see, and now these banners always drive me nuts. All right. When you have to produce and do the show by yourself all the time, you tend to make these errors and mistakes. But look at the pitching probables again. Julio Teheran and Charlie Morton tonight. I don't know what to feel about this game because, I haven't seen Julio Teheran pitch for the Mets. Charlie Morton has pretty much kind of dominated the Mets over the last couple of years. Not a lot of great at-bats against Charlie Morton. There's been some good power at-bats, and maybe that's what the Mets need. Our best batter, like I mentioned earlier, is Joey Wendell, 375 batting average. And that's in 16 plate appearances. Going to need more than Joey Wendell to help this Mets team win game 1. And then how long, the big thing about this tonight, the big thing about tonight's game is Julio Teheran, right? Can Julio Teheran give us 5 to 6 innings? Right? Because we already used some of the bullpen yesterday. I don't know if we have Edwin Diaz again because he already did 2 nights in a row from Thursday, I think, to Friday. He did 2 games in a row, had off Saturday, pitched yesterday, and he may or may not pitch again tonight. I don't know how many times you want him pitching back-to-back this early in the season. So Julio Teheran is going to have to give us some length here. And it's against a tough lineup. So you have that. Here, we'll go back to this. Adrian Hauser against Ronaldo Lopez. That's another game that, this guy only pitched 67 pitches through, what was it, 5 innings? And then they took him out? Can't have something like that happen again. Got to let him try to get through another inning. And if he can, if he puts 2 guys on or puts a guy on base and then you want to take him out, fine, have someone ready. But there doesn't seem to be much outside of Austin Riley, who's got a home run and 6 RBIs and 14 at-bats and a 429 batting average against Hauser. The rest of the lineup has been okay against Hauser. Wednesday is the big concern for me for Jose Quintana. And I like Jose Quintana. I think he's been a solid pitcher as a Met. My concern with Quintana is this lineup likes to chew him up. Mentioned already, Ozzie Albies, 600 batting average, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. Adam Duvall, 375 batting average, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. Marcell Ozuna, 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 455 batting average. And that's just a few of the guys that have kind of hit around Jose Quintana. So that Wednesday game is the concern. The Thursday game is where the Mets need to feast off of Max Fried. Pete Alonso, like I said earlier, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 294 batting average. And Jeff McNeil. That game Thursday needs to be Jeff McNeil's, party. 357 batting average. He's got 4 RBIs against him. I want to see Jeff McNeil getting on base and causing havoc against Max Fried on Thursday. But, like I said, 1 pitch, 1 out, 1 inning, 1 at bat, 1 game, and that starts tonight with Julio Teheran on the mound. Let's get the Mets going in the right direction in this first game, and then we'll move on from there. It's 1 game at a time with this Mets team. 1 game at a time. And I hope that the Mets can take care of business. Shea parking lot. Also, Lindor comes up more clutch last few years. He has been. He has been. He's been a clutch hitter too. This is all more emphasized right now because the Mets have gotten off to a terrible start. Look around the league. I think Carson, I don't know if it was Carson from Mets Weekly or Keefe. Maybe Ibby knows. Either Carson or Ibby had a list of all the hitters that all the stars that have been struggling this season to start. Heck, I'd rather have Francisco Lindor struggle now than in big spots later on in the season. We all saw what happened to him after May. After he had his second baby, dude was a stud. 30-30, that doesn't just come out of nowhere. That wasn't just an anomaly type season. Lindor will be fine. Yeah, if Jingle Man's here, I hope he has I thought he had a Tehran jingle already, but if he doesn't, I'm excited for that, especially if he pitches well. Duran Rivera is saying Alonso is hitting to right in first few games, but struggled in Cincinnati. Maybe he will pick it up against the Braves. I would hope so, right? Like, this is a big series for the Mets and for Pete. I hope there'd be a lot more. I'm not saying that there was a lack of energy because obviously they beat the Reds, but like when you play your division rival, I think there's a different energy when you play them. And I hope it works out well for the Mets. And like just at Patty reading my mind, Alonso plays better against rival teams. So does Lindor. Let's go. I want to see it. Patty says she thinks Hauser and Tehran should be switched. Definitely agree with Quintana, and I really like him too. Yeah, like I said, Quintana, that game is my big concern, especially when we're going against a pitcher that we haven't seen yet or that we don't know about yet. The Mets always seem to struggle with someone that just like comes out of the blue and pitches against them in a series. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. I know Tehran also was warming up in the bullpen yesterday. I think it was just warm-ups. I don't know if he was going to come in if they needed him to come in, but I know he was in the bullpen the other day. Oh, misread the chart. Got that. Okay. So let's see. Let's see, guys, what happens in this series. I'm excited for it. You should be too. And let's root on this team, man. I don't know if you guys have seen what's been going on with the whole Francisco Lindor situation and his wife being harassed on social media. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you're taking baseball that seriously, for us, baseball is just, a hobby to relax and watch. But if you got to go to that lengths to insult someone and, it's not even about being a better baseball fan at that point. It's about being a better human at that point. Be a better human being at that point. Go outside, get some fresh air, something. But let's cheer on these guys, especially when they come. If you're going to the games this weekend, come on, let's root for these guys. I mean, especially, these guys going against this tough Braves team, they need our full support. I know a lot of you guys out here, especially everyone in this chat, huge Met fans and, support this team through thick and thin. I'm out here to support this team. I'll be out there this weekend, and I just want to see them play well. That's all. That's all. Let's take one game at a time during this series. We'll split it up. And that's pretty much it for me. I mean, we've been in here for an hour. I didn't think doing this by myself. I hope I did okay. I don't usually do lives solo, but I think I did fine. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. A couple of housekeeping things. Please make sure you've liked this video so it gets out to more people so that they can see the series. 116 people in here just to hear me talk. I mean, come on now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I have a lot of shorts that come out. I have a couple videos that come out. I have some stuff from my conversation with with Mike Silva from Talking Mets. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. A little less of talking about, every game. That's why I do these series previews, and it's more of, taking some topics and just discussing them the way that I can. But this week, coming up on Subway to Shea, I'm going to have Brian Wright, who wrote, I think it was All Time Mets. I have the book downstairs. I can't remember the title because I'm reading so many books right now. I'm still trying to finish the Ed Kranepool book, which I had an interview with him. I just had not cut the audio from it. At some point, I will do that. But this has been, since September, it has been such a crazy season, off season as well. Even with nothing going on in the off season for the Mets, it's still so much to talk about. But make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You'll get a podcast episode every week. You can check out the one I did with Mike Silva last week. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys, everyone in the chat saying how good is Carlos Ortiz. Appreciate you. Shea Parking Lot. Thank you. Yuki Matsui. Duran Rivera, who's always the first one in here. I'll say that. My guy Duran Rivera. We got the same last name. Always in here to help out here. Danny Matos in here. Ibby, who's in here. G Money Stacks, appreciate you coming in as well. This will be for challenging games against the Braves, but I have faith and I believe that they can at least take two. I'm trying to be realistic. They can at least take two of these games, and I think that would be a job well done. Rosie K, appreciate you. And everyone for tuning in the show. Patty, as always, thank you so much. Appreciate you as well. But that's going to wrap it up here for series preview. Please join me on Thursday for the Kansas City Royals series preview. I'll probably doing that at night. Well, actually, I don't know what time that one is. That actually might be a little earlier because the Braves game on Thursday is at 12:10. So I will probably be coming around 6. You will get updated on it. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll definitely get the update of when that's going to be on. But my guest is Jeff Cohen from the Baseball and Barbecue podcast. He'll be joining me to series preview for Kansas City this coming weekend. Appreciate every single one of you. I'll leave it with this because Patty put it up there. Let's go Mets. All right, let's do this. Like I said, one pitch, one strike, one at bat, one inning, one game at a time. Let's get this series against the Braves. At least split it. If they can win it, even better, right? Let's take care of business this series against the Braves and come home and get some home cooking when they come back to Citi Field. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate you for tuning in. Anthony Rivera of the Subway to Shea podcast signing off. And as Patty says, and as Shea Parking Lot says as well, let's go Mets.